everybody, to Five Little Stones. I have an amazing guest today, my man Travis Brady, which I've met now, I think it's going to be going on 2 years. And having this connection with Travis has opened the doors for many things. And we'll talk more into that. But first of all, I just want to say Travis is a coach's coach. He's a branding expert. He has just a wealth of knowledge and expertise that it's something amazing that I want to just bring and share with everyone. So we all have a little bit of insight of what branding is and what's all this fuss about. It's not just a cool word or a buzzword. Like there's value in branding and there's a reason why branding is a thing. So without further ado, Travis, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, why are you so amazing, and all that good stuff. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, man. I sometimes I don't feel amazing. Sometimes I feel like I'm a shit show, but through that, I am able to pull some good stuff together to deliver. So I appreciate that intro, man. So I've been in the coaching space for 20 years. Last eight of them have been a branding agency where we help essentially put together your brand, your identity, your programs, the way you present them. Everything is how you present things, right? And so we put together the presentation process all the way from the brand marketing to the sales and help people essentially scale from there.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because some people out there that might not know you, why should they be listening to you right now? And on that note, why is branding so important? Because I know you're passionate about the topic.
Yeah, and to kind of go against the grain, as far as everything, you shouldn't listen to me. You should listen more to yourself. I am just here to help people make better choices, better decisions, and ultimately find the strength within them. So yeah, I know that's kind of counterintuitive to what you should say, but I grew up in Utah. It was me and my brother. We grew up playing sports. We love sports, baseball, basketball, football. What was your main sport growing up?
I liked soccer, but back then it wasn't very popular. So
Yeah,
the closest was kickball because you get to kick a ball, but it's
yeah,
not the same. I was good at playing tag or dodgeball.
okay.
Um, I don't know why, because I was a skinny kid, but I was pretty agile and I could catch the ball, so that's how I would win. I wasn't the best at throwing it, but I won most of the times at recess or in gym class. So I think
Nice.
that was a sport that I can say I did all right.
Gosh, aren't we all so jealous of recess now as we're adults? We're like, let's
Yes.
go play out with our friends twice a day. So yeah, and I wanted to be a professional baseball player. As I started to get into it, I realized that I love training and working out more than I actually love the sport. And right out of high school, I just went all in on being a trainer. Was able to finish my degree, work with the University of Utah, Westminster College. And as I went down that path, I realized what I enjoy more is actually helping other personal trainers and other coaches. And what I realized is they were struggling with some of the earlier things that I was in business, which is they didn't really know what it meant to brand. They didn't really know what that process is like. And when I first came into it, I was like, branding stupid, it's dumb, and I don't want to be a part of any of this superficial bullshit. If you're good at what you do, people will just hire you. And business is very counterintuitive, is what I've come to find out. It's not as easy as what I thought it was. And so I came back to the branding and started to really figure out. So I help people through that journey, whether they're creating, evolving the brand. Brand is always the thing that is holding you back, and it's always the thing that's propelling you forward. And so I feel like a lot of people, they look past some of the things. And also, what I've noticed is branding has been branded. Everyone has a different idea about what branding is. I've had some pretty loud people go, branding's stupid. You don't need to brand. That's not the first thing you should be doing when you're building a business. But then they proceed to talk about what I believe is branding, like who's your ideal client? What's your value proposition? What's your free offer? What are the questions that you're trying to answer or problems you're trying to solve? And so, like I was saying, everyone just has a different idea of what branding means as far as everything goes. So that's a little bit about my background and Yeah, and moved down to Phoenix, and now we put together events. Federico's helped with a bunch of them. He's actually spoke at some of them as well. I remember one of the first panelists you spoke on. It was like one of the best panels we've ever had. It was, you shared your story about what you've went through, and it was awesome, man.
Thank you. And actually, that's how we met. Like I mentioned before, it was a
Hmm.
Strengthen Your World event.
Hmm.
Something that I gotta say, because right now a lot of us are used to going either on social media and you listen to a motivational speaker or somebody that has something interesting to say, and you either like it or don't or whatnot. But something that I would say about the live events in person is the experience.
Hmm.
Because the information, yeah, you can look it up, Google it, whatever, but living it and having those, I know we did like I don't know if it's a team builder exercise or what you would call them, but we had a few of those where we interacted, and it really um, gives you an insight, not just logical, mentally, but in your body, in your heart, in the experience of what you're learning, and it gets helps you connect with yourself and with others in ways that you can't do it just through a computer screen or your phone scrolling up and down. So I think that's one of the biggest values that I've found in your live events is having that opportunity to interact with others. And I'm passionate about sharing my message. So thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak at the event. But I've learned so much, which is why I look forward to coming back to those events.
Hmm.
So I'm excited for the next one and the following one, and each one has a different light, and you learn new stuff. You meet new people. You have those person-to-person interactions, and you see all these people that are successful that have had struggles, maybe even greater than yours, and
Hmm.
that's inspiring. That gives you a little bit of a north where to like direction that you can go in that direction and you can make something out of yourself. And I think it was the last event where you brought up, well, there's a lot of people there that are has-beens, wannabes, and all these bees. And I'm like, that's me. I, I was has-been. I've been a wannabe. I'm probably still a wannabe. So it's a matter of just, first of all, realizing you're in that space, but also that there's hope. There's a way to get out of it and to progress and evolve and so forth. So, um, can you share us a little bit? Imagine you know a little bit of my story, but right now in the current present time, you see all these layoffs, all these companies just getting rid of employees, and the job market being hard, and a lot of people end up without jobs. So there's a hustle culture, doing all these side gigs, trying to make ends meet. So
Hmm.
suddenly it dawns to some people like, I want to go into business on my own for myself. I want to create a brand. I want to create a company. What would you share to a person in that situation? And how could you help them get to the next step so they're not worried about just having food on the table, but actually being able to share their music to the world, in other words?
Yeah, and going back to your thing that you said a little bit earlier that we're all has-beens and wannabes, and yeah, we kind of are in a way, right? We've accomplished a lot of different things, and I think it's very easy to downplay your experiences and downplay what you've went through. And that's why I've noticed with a lot of people, it's like we highlight our weaknesses, and give them more power, and then we downplay our strengths. We all have different aspirations about what we want the future to be. And every leader has three stories. They have a story of the past, they have a story of the future. And then, based upon whatever that story of the past was for you and the story of your future, then projects how you're living here in the present. Um, I forgot the original question. What was the original question?
Like,
For the people. Okay. So yeah, going back into the business part of it, you got to make yourself valuable. You got to make yourself important. You got to make yourself, it's like a team. Everyone has a role. And I don't know if do you follow basketball at all, Federico?
I'm not a big fan, but I know basketball.
Yeah,
I've
there was
watched
just
the
this
board
huge
myself.
blockbuster trade with AD going from the Lakers to, uh, I can't even say his name correctly, Donkovic. going to the Lakers. And it's just like if either one of these players were extremely valuable to the franchise, they would have never gave him up. Right. And so if you're struggling right now in business, or you're struggling with finding a job, it's either that you're not delivering the value that you should be, you don't have the value that you think, or the last one, which is you don't know how to present the value that you have in order to get people coming your way. One of those three is the problem. And I was able to hear Andy Frisella years ago in this private mastermind, and he said something that's just kind of been echoing in my mind ever since. He said, "Stop making the same mistakes in your business." And I feel like a lot of people, they keep making the same mistakes over and over and keep doing the same thing, trying to expect a different result every time they do that, right? Like, how's your marketing? Are you still struggling in your marketing to get people to reach out to you? Are you still struggling uh getting offers out each month? Are you still struggling? And so it's really being able to be bold enough and look at the problem. And I love your book that I just recently went through the other week, Facing Your Goliath, right? Because we all have these things that we're facing internally, and we all have things that we're trying to overcome. But something as simple as um, now I'm spacing the name, the sling that he had, like something simple as a tool was able to defeat something really, really big. And so I love that. I love that philosophy in life, is if we learned how to utilize these tools like social media, like video, like AI, if we learned how to utilize some of these tools, we can actually accomplish a lot more than what we think we can.
Thank you.
I
Now,
went on a long rant there as far as everything goes.
no, that's good.
Yeah, but I believe at the end of the day, if you know how to utilize the tools, okay, you're going to find yourself in a different position.
And previously, you mentioned that a lot of people brand the branding, they brand it differently, and they have different meanings and so forth. And some people that say, no, you don't need branding, but then they tell you the things that is actually branding.
Hmm.
So for people that are new to branding or
Hmm.
whatnot, um, and I'll share with you something that I think you mentioned, and it was my experience. When you think of branding, the first thing you think about, it's a cool logo and what colors should I choose?
Yep.
Kind of the aesthetics part. You don't even think about what the really value of branding is. So I don't know if you can help us define what branding is and like give us an insight of the real value, not just the
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah. So the really where the branding process starts is it starts with what is some of your deepest life beliefs? Like, why are we here? Right. And someone put this into context the other day, and it just really baffled my mind. Like, we are, and not to push my values on anyone on the podcast, but I believe in God, and I believe God believes in us. And I believe, everything is energy, whether you want to call us a ghost, whether you want to call us a spirit, whether you want to call us, atoms or energy, whatever you want to refer, but we are literally ghosts in a human flesh on a planet flying through an infinite solar system to no one knows where. And it's just like when you start to put that into context, it's just like, well, what do you believe about why we're here? What does that mean about how you should live? What does that mean about how you should treat people? What does that mean about your purpose on this planet? Like, and you start to think about some of those things. And from that, it starts to generate some of these core questions that we all should be able to answer in our brand. And the first question is, like, why do you do what you do? Why does that matter? And I believe there's two different whys. There's a why of that's more selfish in a way. It's more self-serving. Like, why am I doing this? Why does Federico do this channel? And there's a answer of him that he chooses. Like, why did you decide to do this podcast?
For me, I felt that for whatever reason, I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of opportunities other people's have not had. and I've lived through many things that taught me a lot, but were very hard, very difficult.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to distill the knowledge that I was able to obtain through all these trials and share that with others so that they don't have to go and, you know, step on that rake and get hit in the face where I already did that. If I can avoid you, give you a better path or insights or what is called like life hacks. You know, you used to go on YouTube and they show you how to cook something better, how to open a package, or all these things. You're like, what? I never thought about it. And it just makes your life easier
Mhm.
because you know me, and I've always said it, I'm an average person. There's nothing like super extraordinary about me. I'm not a super athlete. I'm not the smartest, highest IQ, but somehow I've been able to accomplish amazing things. So my testament is if I can do it, anyone can do it. I just want to make sure I don't die without sharing the music that's in my heart with others. So that's part of my why. That's why we're here together. And like I mentioned before, I'm smart enough to know that I don't know it all.
Mhm.
So regarding branding, you're an expert. I want to make sure somebody hears it from the expert, not watered down, middleman from Fede. I can share concepts that I've learned from your class or others and whatnot, but you're the expert. So I really value that. And I think the audience appreciates that they can hear it directly from the source of an expert in whatever field we're talking about. So that's a little bit of my way.
Yeah, and ultimately everybody's why comes back down to something they've experienced and some experience they want to pass on. They say the one thing, not they say there's one big thing that separates us and our ability to communicate versus every other animal in the world. And that is humans have the ability to actually share experiences. Okay. Sharks can't go to another shark and say, hey, don't go over there or go over there. Those where all the turtles are. You have to, like, we learn monkey see, monkey do, right? We learn through so much following and watching. So that's what really separates us as humans. So, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? And a great example of this is Martin Luther King Jr. when he shared his famous speech, I Have a Dream. He didn't say, hey guys, I have a great game plan that we can do to get fair treatment. Hey, here's the things that we need to do from a law standpoint. He went up there and he shared, I have a dream that every man, woman, and child should be free regardless of their color. And as a result, he didn't just attract African Americans, he attracted people of all different backgrounds, because they inevitably believed what he believed is every man, woman, child should be free regardless of their color. And so, what is your brand why? Like, why do you do what you do? Why does it matter? Um, and then the next one is, what's your process? Like, what's the way you do it? What's your formula? Okay. And a lot of times when we're doing that, it's about really bringing it down to the simplest form and then helping draw steps. And an example that we use is what's called our brand X factor formula. Brand X factor formula is a formula that I've essentially identified that every leader does, whether they're conscious of it or not. And the first step is they have a powerful message and they have some powerful stories. Every leader has a powerful message and they have a story. The next one is they have some type of community or event, and usually both, that they essentially gather together, right? People that believe the same thing. And then the last thing is they have a unique service or they have a unique product for this type of community. So we put this together in essentially a formula so people could see the process. What's your process, right? Who do you work with, and then who do you not work with, and then lastly, and I'm just running by these really fast, is what's the result? So if we work with you, okay, what's the result? So going back to Federico, with his workbook is about helping you slay your Goliath, right? What is your Goliath? What is the thing that you're trying to get past? So that's a breakdown of those four. And so whenever you're in the branding process or building your business, you're always going back to those four questions to essentially find out, how to serve more people, how to help more people. And when you're serving and helping more people and you're making that the focus, now the byproduct is the money. And I think sometimes we get caught up on the money, not realizing it's the byproduct. If we focus on the money, we don't get the money. But if we focus on the process will then create the money that we're hoping to get.
Well said. And for you, if you would like to share, what was your breakthrough, like the breaking point that where you realized there was a before and after that moment, where, before it was old Travis and maybe um, had all these challenges, wanted to be or wasn't, and so forth, struggling. But one of a sudden, something, an aha moment or a breakthrough that now, like, you're helping people become successful, be a better version of themselves. You're helping people brand, and you have all these steps and all these guidelines, all these coaching masterminds, and so forth. What was that moment for you?
When are those moments, I guess you should say. I don't think it's ever just one moment. Coming back to branding, if that's our focal point, is, I was this was back in like 2014. I'm in the middle, 2013, 2014, I can't remember. Tim Tebow was on the TV for ESPN and is showing his trainer training him. And I'm looking at the way he's training him, and I'm just like, what the hell is he doing? Like, that's why Tim Tebow's slow and mechanical, is because he's training on a machine right there. And I was just like, why am I not a celebrity personal trainer? Right? Because there's nothing that separates my knowledge from this professional trainer's knowledge. So, what is the separator? Why are we in different positions? It's who do I know? Okay. And how have I branded that? How have I positioned what I know? And so, what we got to realize is that a brand is way more important than we think it is. Okay. How we're viewed, how our expertise is viewed is everything. Are people open to it? Do people go, wow, that's really awesome. I need to follow that? Are people asking questions? And so, these are a lot of the things that have been my breakthroughs over the years. Is why is that person doing it, and why am I struggling, or why do other people struggle? And usually it's how we present our information. Where did you go to school, Federico? Did you go to school in Arizona?
I went everywhere. In Arizona, maybe for a little bit, because when I was younger, I lived in Tucson, but we moved a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been to so many schools. It got to the point where I finally made friends, and we were moving again, and it was rough time. But I did a college here in Arizona. I got my bachelor's here in Phoenix.
Yeah. What do you remember from eighth grade history class?
I don't even know what of the history that I know was even.
What about anything in high school history class?
Not much, because I think most of the history I know has been either through my own research or
Uh-huh.
through a movie. Yeah, I saw it in a movie.
Yeah.
That's why.
And the reason why I'm asking that question right now is because they say without motion or emotion, we don't remember things. Without motion and emotion. One of my past clients was like, wow, Travis is really more animated lately on stage. And the reason for that is because if I say something, I want it to stick. Okay. If I tell you something, I don't want any chance of you not remembering what I just said and forgetting it. And so it just all comes back down to what we're talking about, is how do we present our business? How do we present our offer? How do we showcase our programs? And I just believe that's a game you're never done, and I feel like a lot of people, they spend so much time on making their program or their process good, and they forget the number one thing, which is how do we present that program or that process or that product? Because the way we present it is everything. So that's probably been some of my greatest breakthroughs. But if I'm going back to like history, the greatest history teacher I had was one in college, and he just went up there and he just told stories. He made jokes about his ex-wife, which was almost every single day, which was really funny, and he just made it entertaining. And through the process, we were like, through him loving that, through him loving what he was doing, it really rubbed off on, especially, I can't speak for anyone else because I don't stay in touch with anyone else from that class, but for me, those stories became memorable for me because of the way he presented them. Who was your most memorable teacher from school?
So I've been fortunate to have a lot of good teachers, but as you're sharing that with me, this particular teacher comes to mind. So for like first part of the year, we had this amazing teacher, but then he um, retired, so we got a new teacher, which it was I felt shortchanged. Like, no, I want my old teacher back. But and the reason is because he told stories. For example, the topic, the class was understanding empirical knowledge versus scientifical knowledge. And the way he approached empirical knowledge, it was with a story that in the town where he lived, there was this older gentleman that he always knew if it was going to rain or if it was not going to rain. And it was like amazing. Like they would ask him, "Hey, Pops, like, is it gonna rain today?" And he'll say, "Nope." Or they would ask him, "Hey, is it raining today?" "Yep, but it's sunny. There's no clouds." "Yeah, but it's gonna rain." And sure enough, it rained. So, long story short, this man would always go into the fields because he would work and do whatever he was doing. And on his way there, he would look at the grass. And when the grass still had that um, mist in the mornings from the condensated water, little droplets and stuff, that day was a day that was not going to rain. But if when he was walking, the grass was dry, that means that was a day where it was going to rain. So he knew that empirically. Like he didn't have any scientific studies or whatnot, but he knew just by observing that phenomenon when it was going to rain. Now, scientific knowledge is explaining how is it that he knew.
Mhm.
And in short, the reason that effect was true is because when there was still the mist and the moisture on the plants or on the grass, is because the water hadn't evaporated, creating clouds for it to rain. But then when it was dry, that meant the water had evaporated, so it's up in the atmosphere and it was going to come down pouring.
Mhm.
So I thought that was fascinating. What a way to explain something where you're not reading a textbook. Okay, you gotta learn this paragraph because the second teacher we had, the way of that he would teach, he would give you, for example, that same topic. He say, read book from here to here, and there are these 20 questions. You have to answer those questions and memorize them, and you're gonna be tested on that.
Mhm.
And I always hated memorizing stuff. I wanted to understand the concept. Like what I just shared with you, the story of this teacher, that's
Mhm.
not verbatim word for word, but
Yeah.
the concept, the essence, I can share it with you.
Yeah.
Versus the questions, I can't remember one single question that I had to memorize for the test.
Yeah, school did a horrible job of preparing people for the entrepreneurial world, and that's what we have to understand. And I share this concept a lot. There's a difference between a wild lion and a zoo lion, right? And if you take a zoo lion that's grown up their entire life in a zoo, sometimes they can't even reintroduce these animals back to the wild, because they don't know how to survive. They don't know how to fend for themselves. They don't know because they've never been taught that. And the same thing goes with entrepreneur. Did you grow up with entrepreneur parents? What type of entrepreneur parents? Right? Did they start a business from the ground up? Did they step into one? Did they own multiple businesses? Did they just work for somebody? What was that process like? Did they get fired? Like all these things that we don't necessarily pay attention to, we grown up, it essentially prepared us for the job market. And so for me, I had parents that were they had businesses, but they positioned themselves as a job within their business. And so that's how I ran my business. Yeah, I have a business owner and I say I'm a business owner, but then I'm building a business that's not really a business. I'm just building a job for myself. And if you're going to build a business, you might as well build it to sell one day. You might as well build it with systems and processes. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do these things. We had a person the other day that was getting help with that was getting helped with their technology and their back end systems and processes, and he got frustrated. He's like, "This is why I don't do this stuff." And I was like, dude, if you don't learn how to do this stuff, Okay, you're going to eventually work for someone that does know how to do this stuff. So you got to learn how to do this stuff. And the more you can learn how to do it, and not everything, you at least need to know at least the overall macro picture, not necessarily all the micro stuff. And I would say that about most things in business. You don't need to know every little detail, but you need to know enough of it so you know how to work with someone in the process of doing it. And so I believe, a lot of things that we do as entrepreneurs is counterintuitive. And so if we haven't learned from someone, we either got to go learn it for ourselves, which is a very slow and painful process, or else we got to be able to sum up the dollars to go get coaching from it, which I have my entire life and I still do to this day. I walk into a workshop and I go, I'm not going to be sold. And then next thing you know, I'm buying stuff to learn more, right? Because I know if I can learn it now and if I can apply these principles and processes, it's going to allow me to create more time freedom in the end. Um, and then, yeah, and I think that's just what it is. And Federico is a student of the game. He comes to a lot of events and he's very open. And because of that, I know he's going to be a great leader and a great coach because his ability to suck the knowledge from everybody that he comes in context with. And especially like everyone should do a channel. Everyone should have a podcast because you don't realize you doing the podcast, you're growing just as much as the people listening doing the podcast, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of different things that we can do to make ourselves better, to pass on to other people, but ultimately for that one core purpose, which is influence, income, and time freedom.
That's awesome. And back to a newbie that comes looking for help, trying to find themselves, trying to find a way. Because one of the things that you mentioned, the education system was created to make workers, not to make entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Because all these companies even go to the schools and promote and do all these job fairs and whatnot. With what purpose? So that they have more labor for themselves. So you're basically sometimes killing yourself working, busting your butt to make someone else rich, and you are not really maybe even getting paid accordingly to all the value that you bring. But that's how the system is designed. In the same manner, just like that lion that was raised in captivity, you can't release them to the wild because they don't know how to fend themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So in this environment where many of us went through college and did the whole um, teachings of how to become an employee, and suddenly you have something that wants you to go and release yourself into the wild. And it's not only scary, but like that lion, you don't know how to fend for yourself. You have to focus on all these things, like how do you provide for yourself? How do you invest in yourself? How do you do all these things? Technology, like the example you shared with us. And one of the things that comes to mind, I don't know if I read this or saw it somewhere, but it was an article that spoke about the time of the emancipation when slavery was finally abolished here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
and there were freedom given to all these slaves. Some of these slaves, according to what I read or heard, would go back to their previous owners and beg them to take them back because they didn't know how to be free. They didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to do it on their own.
Yeah.
And in my story, I know being in the front, coming from the corporate world, now you're out in the free, in the wild, and you're like, a part of me wants to go back to the corporate world because that's what I know and that's where I was able to feed myself and do all these things. So I think there's a first of all mindset change. It's just you have to have a different mindset and also be willing to, like you mentioned, invest in yourself, which I've been trying to invest in myself as much as I can, but also try to help others in the way. Because as I'm learning, if I'm as I'm growing, I want to share that with someone. Because when you receive, you give, and when you give, you actually receive. When you teach, you learn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also part of the reason why I'm here. I don't want to wait until I'm perfect to start sharing my lessons learned. I want to do it as soon as possible because maybe somebody listening to us right now will even do better than myself, which I'm okay with. I want to pass this on. So, in that sense, what advice would you have for somebody that's either thrown back into the wild or decides they're gonna go and explore the wilderness? And what is the importance of branding and all these events that you have that support, encourage, or help people?
Yeah, and I love that history lesson, by the way. And I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised of that. Harriet Tubman has a quote. She was a famous slave that saved a lot of other slaves, but she said she saved thousands of slaves and she could have saved thousands of more if they would have believed they were slaves. And so sometimes we and people who are listening for this podcast, they're the types of people that either already have a business, they're in the process of creating a business, or they're working for someone ready to make the jump. But here's what I would say, some people and I used to kind of dog on these people in a way, and I have to like come back and apologize to some of those people for that. Like having a business isn't for everybody. It's really not, right? Like, some people would rather just be like that zoo lion, be fed when, do what they're told to do, not have to think, not have to bring in leads, you know, and which brings me to my next point. Those who make the leads make the rules. If you want to make more rules in your life, you got to learn how to market. You got to learn how to bring in leads, as far as everything goes. But yeah, it's learning how to be efficient for yourself, learning how to market. And I love that example that you use a part of that as well. That's a great example. I should probably use that more, honestly, in my presentations.
Awesome, great. Um, so again, back to branding, which I know you have expertise in different fields, but I know branding is a big one, or I don't know if that's your top expertise or what you focus on the most. Um, what would be, you've already shared, the why and the systems and all these things, but somebody that comes from left field, they're new in the game, what's the first thing they should do? Because many people, and I put myself as an example, first thing is let's get a logo. Let's figure out a cool logo for my brand or a cool catchy name. And just for context, I remember um, hearing some expert on branding saying on your brand, you have to be clear. Don't try to get cute even with your branding because if it gets too convoluted and too complicated where people can't find you, it defeats the purpose. You want to make it as simple as possible. So what would be what you would advise somebody that in that mindset, oh, I just want a cool logo. I just want to get the figure out my slogan or whatever.
Yeah, I would go deeper with it. I'd go deeper with your business and all those questions that we really asked about. And the biggest thing is don't go on your own. Like don't try to figure this out on your own. There's so much out there. There's so many people out there like myself, and there's so many workshops like the ones we offer that help you with this step by step. And so I would say that. I would also say, be in some type of community that you can be around these like-minded individuals, because that's the biggest thing. When you're in the corporate world, you're probably hanging out with other corporate people. When you jump in the entrepreneur world, all the corporate people are probably going to think you're crazy and dumb, or they just won't get it. They won't have anything much to offer because they haven't done it. And so we got to be careful about where we're getting our information from and where we're getting our steps from. And I think a good general question is, would you be willing to trade lives with this person? Do they have some of the things that you would like to have within your life? And if you can't say that on any level, then I would be very cautious of that. And here's what I would say to that. Everyone has the best intentions. Okay. They really do. But here's the thing, just because you have good intentions or someone has good intentions doesn't mean that what they're giving is right. Okay. If I want to do heart surgery on someone, okay, which I shouldn't ever, but if I have great intentions to do heart surgery to save your grandma, that doesn't mean fucking anything. Right. So it's intentions. And then the next one is understanding. What do you know? What you don't know? What do you think you know that you haven't really experienced yet? Like you think you know how to market, but have you actually been able to draw in clients and create continuous leads? You say you know sales, but have you actually been able to teach a sales process that can help someone? So I think we just need to put our ego in check. And I'm always learning this. The next level of your life in business is always checking your ego at the door. And if you do not check your ego at the door, okay, you are going to get kicked out along with your ego at that level, which means it's not going to work the way that you ultimately want. So I'm always, I shouldn't say always, but I'm learning that the faster I can come to humility and being open and being humble, then the better results. So I've had a few moments in my life where I started to make my money and I started to think I'm all that, and it quickly hits you in the face. And so what I'm coming to realize is just trying to be in that energy all the time, be open, be humble, be willing to learn, but also, being humble doesn't mean thinking less of oneself. That's not what being humble is. You shouldn't just think less of yourself. Humble is being open to more possibilities, that maybe there's something more you can learn and more you can grow. So I think sometimes we define words, and we define words all differently, and I call this branding, and we don't realize the context of which this is giving to our actions and behaviors, because how we view something and what we believe about a word or something is affecting everything. So I think the ultimate thing is being humble. And Federico is a big example of that. Like, you've always been humble, you've always been open, and I would just be careful with some of those people that you're not overtly humble. You're not so humble to the point where you're discounting what you do know and the strengths that you do have, right? So it's this weird conundrum. Like, not enough humility is bad, but too much humility in the form of self-deprivation of your own strengths, that's not good either, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
so
great
so I'm
stuff.
always trying to figure out, that space, that perfect blend between it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. That's some great stuff. And uh, I appreciate you sharing it. Another thing that intrigued me about marketing is when I realized that us as human beings, we're emotional beings. And when we make a purchase, when we buy something, it's an emotional purchase.
Mhm.
And it just blew my mind because you see a lot of the advertisements either on television or so forth, and the advertisement itself is about something totally different than what the company is. So, for example, they give you this concept of be able to do whatever you can do and all these things and be amazing and be all, and then it's a computer commercial. Like, okay. Or it's like they show you the scenery of families and the dad pushing the daughter on the swing and they're having like a barbecue and blah blah blah, and it's just a really wholesome moment, and it's for these weird medicine or drug that
Yeah.
you have like 5 seconds of small sprint running down the screen of all the ways it could kill you if you take it and
Yeah.
all the
Right.
side effects. So it's just interesting how even marketing at bigger levels, the way they brand, they don't go and say, "Oh, we make good computers," and that's their commercial, or we make medicine that may heal you or can kill you. They focus on something else. So in that sense, how can we discover what our branding connects to, or how do we discover how to connect with people in that manner?
Yeah, I believe that first it's going back to, like, we talked about every leader has three stories. And that first story starts with your past story. And once you know more of yourself from the past, what makes you tick, what inspires you, what motivates you. Everyone mix up the difference between inspiration and motivation. Inspiration is more based on love, and motivation is more based around fear. Okay. And understanding your fears, what you love, and then understanding, okay, when you did finally take action on real estate, on your fitness, on your accounting, what were some of those breakthroughs that actually had you step forward and actually take the action necessary to do that? Because the more you understand yourself, the more you'll be able to influence that version of yourself. Okay, so the more you can allow yourself to be influenced and allow and understand how you're influenced, the better you are at influencing other people. So I would say that it's more about knowing yourself, knowing your own journey.
And that's awesome because that's even one of like Socrates and all the wise philosophers from the past. There's a quote that says, if you want to get to know the universe and the gods, know thyself.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
everything starts through you and in you and through you.
Yep. Absolutely.
So that just made me think of that, which is amazing. Now, Travis, if you be kind enough, I can see people listening to everything that you've been sharing, and they heard about what life events, like how can I participate in these, or how can I connect with Travis? Maybe something you said resonated with them, or they're in that discovery stage where they need the help. They don't want to do it on their own. They don't want to be struggling and making all the mistakes that somebody has already figured out a way of how to avoid them. They want a smoother path, more successful, leverage all that experience that people like you have. How can they come to these events? How can they contact you? How can they hire you? Tell us all the deets. Give us all the 411.
Yeah, so two awesome things I have for the listeners listening. So one, I have a free branding blueprint docu-series. I've been working on it for a while. I spent a year and a half putting it together. I also spent over $50,000. So it's all these resources around videos, blueprints, ebook, to really help you dive down deep and start working through the branding process. So if you text the word brand X, all one word, to 480-428-4170. And I'll repeat that: 480-428-4170. So text the word brand X to that number and it will take you through the process. Or you could go to findyourbrandxfactor.com. Next, we do a lot of networking events with our B3 community, which includes Brand X, Boss Babes, and Brotherhood. And we're doing a bunch of networking events. We usually charge like $40, $50 for those types of events. If you're listening to this podcast, message me on Instagram and say, hey, I heard you through Federico's podcast, and I will give you a free ticket to one of our events coming up. And I would love to introduce you to a lot of awesome business owners in our network. And yeah, so message me that way. And
No,
and
thank you
my
for
my Instagram, I guess that would be important to know, right?
yeah.
Travis Brady Brands, all one word, Travis Brady Brands. Send me a message and I'll get you hooked up.
Thank you, Travis. And now I do have to attest as being part of your events and just getting to know you. One of the big values is just networking and getting to know other people that are excited about building themselves. And there's a array of talent there on different fields. Because one of my breakthrough or aha moments, it's when I realized that you have to figure out a way to let others people do what they're good at so you can do what you're good at. I had this mentality of changing hats. Like I would do it all. I wanted to do the website. I would do the podcast. I would do the editing. It was all on me where it got to the point that it was too much. I couldn't keep up. And I started falling behind where I wouldn't have new episodes of the podcast because I didn't have the time to edit or do the interviews because I was so busy trying to figure out this other technology or going into events. And once you identify that what you're good at, and then there's other people that are better at either marketing or sales or communication or technology or whatever that may mean, you can delegate a lot of that stuff and it frees your time and it helps you move forward and replicate and 10x or whatever the buzzwords are. And one of the things that I've encountered in these events is all this array of talent. You are not only getting the benefits of all the material you share and uh, all this even money and time that you've invested to share with others. And like you said, a lot of it is even free, which is amazing. So if you don't have the resources right now, you don't have an excuse because the material is there for you to start working. And if you're doing it, you're going to have the resources and you're going to make things happen. But also, the people that are in the room with you, you don't know who's sitting next to you. You can have the person that, if you don't know technology, you don't know the first thing about a website, guess what? Somebody sitting next to you, they might be expert web designers. And
Mhm.
then you might be an expert at something else, and you can leverage each other and make connections. So I think that's one of the big values that of coming to your events and being part of these communities bring. So I just want to be a testimony of that because I've seen that play out at least in my life, in my experience. So wanted to share with that. What else am I missing?
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, and something that Federico does, I don't know if he does this conscious. He's always saying, "Hey, how can I help you? How can I serve you?" And I really appreciate that, by the way, as well. And sometimes when we hire coaches, sometimes we come in with a selfish mentality of like, "Oh, I'm here to receive," but not understanding that every relationship is a give and receive. And if you're just coming into a relationship just giving money and that's all you really are wanting to give is just the money, and then we get into this place where, oh, now I'm just supposed to receive all this because I already gave the money, and that's not the case. And if you want to build a better relationship with your coaches and your mentors and just anyone around you, above you or below you in any aspect of life, always ask, hey, how can I help? How can I serve you? And I really appreciate that you always ask that. And usually it's just me going, hey, just share your experience of me. And so yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate that, man.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate everything that you've shared with me and others because I see you impact a lot of people's lives positively. So I value that. I do see that. One of the things that resonated with me that I heard from you is as you do one thing, you do all things. And that just made so much sense. It brought me back to training, like when people in a sports environment, let's say basketball. If you're just training and you're shooting the hoop, like whatever, just throwing some bricks at the board like I do, then expect the championship day for you to be just excelling and being amazing. You're gonna fall short because you never train like a champion. You train average, mediocre, and that's how you're gonna play in real life. So the way you train is the way you perform. And that is something that it's a big takeaway. I always try to give it my all, whether no one is watching or if somebody is there, because you never know the impact you can have on somebody. You can be in
Mhm.
a room with two people, but if you have impact on those people, it's better than if you're in a room with 100 people and you have zero impact on anyone. And you never know who's listening, you never know who's watching. And I know you're a dad now. It even is more important once you're a father or a parent because now your little one is always watching. Even when you don't think they're watching, they are. And they
Yeah.
learn more from you by your example than by what you tell them. So I don't know if you felt that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have. And that's probably my most important thing in this world is to be a good dad. And to uh, raise my son to become, a great man in today's world. And I'm so proud of him. And not that he's perfect, but I'm just proud in who he's becoming. And I always help him see that. I always try to help him see, what he should be proud within himself, not to always seek that externally from his father.
Well, that's great. And fatherhood is definitely a blessing. There's no words until you become a father. You can mentally understand it, but you don't get it until
Yeah,
you live it.
yeah, for sure.
I do believe that there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the master appears or
Yeah.
the teacher appears. And I'm a true believer. And I don't know what I've done in this life or other lives that I've been so fortunate that I've had such amazing mentors and teachers throughout my life. So the only thing I can be is thankful. And the only way I know how to compensate or do retribution for all the blessings that I've received is try to pass them on and try to pay it forward and keep it going. And to the point that if there is an area of expertise that I'm not the expert, I'm happy to connect people and say, okay, well, I don't know how to do this, but I know somebody that can help you with that. And I
Mhm.
really am passionate about connecting, even if directly there is no benefit for me. But if I can be of service to others, that's something that I'm also passionate about. And the reason I bring that up is also because you're one of the mentors that I feel that I must have done something great at some point in my life or some other life that I got to meet yourself and people like you. So I want to publicly say it because I know it just learning a lot of the concepts that you shared with myself and others has made a positive impact in my life. And I want you to hear it. And I know I probably told you privately, but I really feel that way. And anyone that comes into our lives is a blessing because there's this instant that you're alive, and in the context of time, it's just a little parenthesis, and you only have this time, so this time is sacred for
Mhm.
this particular life experience.
Yeah.
So I truly do appreciate that, and I value everybody that comes into my life, especially that shares with me something of value that has my best interest in mind. So I want to say thank you. I think
Yeah.
that's what.
Thanks. Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And before we disconnect, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you have amazing stuff going on, and thank you for making this space to share a lot of your expertise with our viewers and myself. What would be some closing comments or any takeaways, last words? If there was one thing or something that you want the people listening right now for them to take with them, what would it be? Just open your heart.
I would say you're always working on your brand. I'm always talking about it. I'm always sharing about it. Hopefully we've connected on Instagram. If not, again, Travis Brady Brands. I got a lot of free stuff for you. So let's stay connected. And I would love to support you any way I can.
Thank you. And then Travis Brady, Brady with a Y, correct?
Yep.
Brady.
Yep.
Perfect. Any last remarks?
No, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. Travis, thank you for jumping on. I'm excited to see you again, and um, amazing things are about to happen.
Absolutely.
May the force be with you. Thank you for jumping on.
Nice.